0342 a.m., August 23, 07025. 70 armed boats suddenly emerged from the darkness, charging like a pack of bloodthirsty sharks toward the USNS Liberty Star, a supply ship carrying fuel and ammunition, the vital lifeline of a U.S. Navy carrier strike group. This was not just an ambush, it was a brazen probe, a blatant test of America's defensive capabilities on the world's most strategic maritime route. The enemy thought they could encircle, overwhelm, and sink it. But what unfolded next was not merely defense. It was a brutal lesson in modern warfare, resonating across oceans and global military command corridors. Could a logistic ship not designed for combat withstand a sea of fire and an onslaught of enemies? And what happened when the ship came under attack? Let's uncover the truth. Don't take your eyes off the screen before the secret is revealed. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts on this battle. 3:42 a.m., August 20th, 2025. The radar screen on the bridge of the supply ship USNS Liberty Star suddenly lit up with a series of unusual signals, initially resembling interference or a common technical glitch caused by strong winds or high waves. But within seconds, all doubts vanished as the blips didn't disappear. Instead, they formed into dozens of small, fast-moving targets skimming low across the water like shadows racing through the night, their speed increasing in a synchronized rhythm as if guided by an unseen hand.
The radar operator immediately reported, "Voice Horse, this isn't interference, it's an organized approach."
The bridge commander snapped his head toward the screen, his steely eyes freezing as the confirmation appeared. 70 high-speed boats were closing in on the ship from multiple directions at once. No lights, no radio, no identification codes. In those fleeting seconds, the atmosphere on the Liberty Star transformed completely from the slow, steady rhythm typical of a supply ship into a ticking bomb of tension ready to explode. The General Porter's alarm blared, its chilling tone tearing through the darkness, followed by the pounding footsteps of the crew. Civilian engineers, medical personnel, and sailors accustomed to logistics and resupply now rushed to emergency combat stations. At the .50 caliber machine guns mounted on both sides of the ship, gunners struggled to load ammunition belts, checking barrels with trembling hands, knowing they had never imagined becoming the first line of defense against such an overwhelming wave of attackers. Below deck, technical teams hurriedly sealed watertight doors and secured fuel compartments because a single stray round hitting that area could turn the multi-million-dollar ship carrying thousands of tons of fuel into a massive fireball at sea. On the bridge, the captain of the Liberty Star simultaneously radioed the Fifth Fleet for guidance and ordered loudspeakers to broadcast warnings in 3 languages: English, Arabic, and Somali, hoping the approaching attackers might reconsider. But the only response was the roar of engines and the flickering red dots of lasers aimed directly at the ship's hull. Through the observation window, officers could see more clearly. Many boats were laden with boarding ladders, others had crudely welded machine gun mounts, and some were packed with barrels and plastic cans, signs of a suicidal attack. No one on board could forget the weekly security briefings. Never underestimate those rickety wooden boats. They can turn into floating bombs at any moment. The Liberty Star was not a warship, let alone an aircraft carrier with hundreds of Marines, but merely a supply link in the Navy's vast operational chain. Yet tonight, it had to defend itself alone. As the nearest escort, the destroyer USS Mason was nearly an hour away. In the pitch-black sea, 70 boats closed in like sharks, smelling blood, splitting into 3 groups to encircle the ship, narrowing the distance 2,000 yards, 1,500 yards. While on deck, the gunners' fingers trembled on triggers, waiting for the official order to fire. Each second felt like a century, and then one boat suddenly surged forward, its engine screaming, accelerating directly toward the Liberty Star's midsection, closing the gap to 900 yards, 600 yards, 400 yards. The radar blipping red furiously. In that moment, the entire ship seemed to freeze in breathless tension, knowing a collision could tear the hull apart. But the firing order still hadn't arrived from the satellite system, leaving every eye on the bridge fixed on the screen, awaiting a life-or-death decision. 0445 a.m. The firing order finally came, 15 seconds late, but feeling like a lifetime to the tense crew on the Liberty Star's deck when the message "Row authorized engage" flashed on the comm screen. The command fire barely left the captain's lips before the .50 caliber machine gun on the starboard side roared to life. Red-hot tracer rounds streaking across the dark sea, shattering the silence with a deafening bellow. Within moments, the lead high-speed boat erupted in flames, its bow splinter, wooden and fiberglass hull fragments exploding in a small blast, oil igniting on the water's surface. But the rest didn't stop. Over a dozen boats charged into firing range, machine guns on both sides of the ship unleashing volleys, tracer rounds slicing through the air, spent casings clattering onto the deck, the smell of gunpowder mixing with sea oil. The cram system, previously on standby, was manually activated. The white gun turret whirred, swiveled, and locked onto a target. Its mechanical scream cutting through the air as a missile launched in the blink of an eye, slamming into a boat packed with fuel barrels. The explosion created a fireball taller than the ship's mast, lighting up the sea like a lightning flash. Debris rained down like shrapnel. It was the first hard kill, but no one had time to celebrate as dozens more boats pressed forward. Below deck, warning alarms blared incessantly. Technical teams sealed additional compartments, smoke seeping in as an RPG round struck the outer deck and detonated, mercifully missing the main fuel tanks. On deck, chaos reigned. One boat slipped through the barrage, closing in on the port side, deploying boarding hooks. 4 figures leaped onto the deck. One brandishing a knife, another firing a gun. Close quarters combat erupted instantly. A civilian sailor smashed a fire extinguisher into an attacker's face, taking a grazing bullet to the shoulder, but buying enough time for a Navy sailor to close in, firing 2 M4 rounds to end the boarding attempt. Smoke, fire, gunfire, and shouts merged into one, indistinguishable from the roar of boat engines or the whistle of bullets. The first wave seemed endless, each minute marked by boats exploding, but also sailors getting wounded. 5 crew members were hit by bullets or shrapnel, one writhing with a chest wound, dragged by comrades to an inner compartment for bandaging. Flames from a destroyed boat spread to the ship's side, forcing the firefighting team to douse it while dodging bullets. Each magazine change left gun crews trembling, knowing a few seconds' delay could let the enemy storm the deck, the captain shouted over the intercom. Only fire at targets under 700 yards, don't waste ammo, but the order was a fragile thread of discipline in the chaos. Gunners kept firing relentlessly. The sound of their weapons, the only thing convincing them they still had a chance to survive. When the 12th boat was torn apart, the first wave finally began to recede. But it was merely a pause to regroup. On the sea, at least 20 more boats still circled, moving in arcs to find gaps. The surviving boats from the first wave didn't retreat. They held position, shielding their comrades behind them. Everyone on the Liberty Star knew this was just the beginning. The deck was now littered with gleaming brass casings thick with gunpowder smoke, scorched steel patches, and the faint smell of blood. A young engineer slumped against a staircase, hands shaking, blood dripping from a gash on his forehead, staring blankly at the charred hole. But a gunner shout for more ammo snapped him back, and he staggered to haul another crate to the deck. In the distance, radar pinged new signals, slow but deliberate, as if the first wave was merely a decoy. A tense minute of silence before the next storm. The Liberty Star had held for the first 18 minutes, but the toll was clear. 5 wounded, multiple outer compartments breached, a section of deck scorched, and most critically, the crew's morale pushed to the brink. As the distant boats began to accelerate, forming clusters of 3 or 4, their engines roaring through the night, everyone understood the first wave wasn't over. It was escalating into a fiercer maelstrom. The flames from burning boats drifting on the sea hadn't yet died out when the next wave hit. No longer just probing or harassing, but a coordinated, direct, and decisive assault. On the radar, 6 boats broke from the formation, accelerating full throttle toward the Liberty Star's port side. Gunners on deck shouted hoarsely over the radio, "Targets are ramming, brace for impact." The captain barely had time to redirect firepower before the 50 caliber guns roared again, red streaks slicing the night. 2 boats exploded in blinding orange flashes, bodies and debris scattering across the water. But the remaining 4 pressed on undeterred. One slammed directly into the mid-deck, the ship screeching with the grinding of steel, smoke and fire bursting outward as attackers threw boarding ladders and hooks, charging onto the deck through black smoke. The close combat breach alarm echoed through the ship, sending chills down spines. In the darkness, the fight was no longer just guns and bullets, but knives, fire axes, and bare hands. 2 security sailors rushed the breach point. M4S raised, dropping the first attacker, cresting the railing, but 3 others lobbed smoke grenades, thick clouds obscuring the deck corner. In the choking haze, stray gunfire rang out, shouts piercing through, a young sailor collapsing with a shoulder wound, blood soaking his shirt. His comrade, without hesitation, smashed a fire extinguisher into an attacker's face, the crack of breaking bone chilling. On the other side, a 25-year-old engine technician used wrenches and bolts, swung a fire axe at a boarding ladder, severing it, and sending 2 pirates plunging into the black waves. After another boat closed to within 50 m before concentrated fire turned it into a fireball, but not before 2 attackers hurled Molotov cocktails, one igniting against the ship's side, flames licking at electrical cables like a fiery snake. The emergency firefighting team rushed in, spraying white foam, steam, and smoke choking the air, causing sailors to cough violently. Below deck, the pressure was even more intense. An RPG fragment pierced the outer hull just meters from the main fuel tank. Engineers drenched in sweat and oil frantically reinforced the breach, each rivet and steel plate a gamble with their lives. "If this goes, we're all fireworks," one engineer panted, hands trembling as he tightened a bolt. On deck, chaos piled on chaos. A pirate leaped over the railing, submachine gun in hand, but before he could fire, a Marine tackled him, the two rolling across a deck littered with casings, gunfire deafening until a bayonet on an M4 ended it swiftly. The radar screamed again. From the northeast, nearly 15 more boats appeared, fanning out like a pack of sharks tightening their circle. There was no doubt now these weren't amateur pirates chasing ransoms. Their formation, coordination, and intercepted radio signals all pointed to a trained, directed force. On the bridge, the captain gritted his teeth. This is military tactics, not freelance piracy. When a second RPG exploded, a steel shard struck the smokestack, the ship lurching, thick black smoke engulfed half the hull. Shouts, cries for help, and piercing alarms blended together. A boat rammed the starboard side, 6 figures leaping aboard, swinging knives and clubs, one holding a gun to a sailor's head. But in a flash, 3 U.S. sailors from the security base stormed out, gunfire erupting, blood and smoke mixing as the pirates fell, and the sailor was dragged to safety, face pale. The close quarters fight raged for nearly half an hour. The deck of battlefield, burning boat wreckage, blood stains on steel, flames flickering at the railings while the crew fought desperately to repel each wave. But they were clearly exhausted. And then the radar pinged a strong signal from the southeast. A familiar icon lit up, sparking hope across the bridge. The destroyer USS Mason was closing in, slicing through the waves.
Voice is hoarse. Mason's coming. Hold on a few more minutes.
The eastern sky was just beginning to glow with a faint gray light when the massive silhouette of the USS Mason tore through the darkness. An Arleigh Burke-class destroyer cutting the water like a predator, its bow slicing waves as it raced toward the smoke and fire engulfed Liberty Star. On the Liberty Star CIC radar, the familiar icon blazed like a lighthouse, carrying the hope the entire crew had clung to through 40 minutes of life or death tension. Muted cheers broke out on the bridge, quickly stifled as the battle was far from over. The surviving boats from earlier waves didn't flee. They tightened their encirclement, and from the northeast, new signals appeared. Mason didn't hesitate. Upon entering range, its Aegis combat system went fully active. Guns and missile launchers primed the first shot from the 5-in Mark 45 cannon roared. An H round with a contact fuse screaming through the air, detonating just ahead of a boat cluster. The white-hot explosion sending shock waves that flipped several boats, hurling their crews into the sea. The shock and gore effect was immediate. Some boats feared to retreat, but many pressed forward with irrational determination. Then Mason's CIWS roared, 20mm tungsten rounds shrieking like a metal beast, weaving a steel rain that shredded 2 daring boats. Fire trails flashed, debris scattered, and thick black smoke rose. Above, 2 Puma UAVs launched, their electronic eyes scanning the battlefield, relaying real-time infrared and optical imagery. On the CIC screens, each boat was marked and categorized, moving, neutralized, or evading. Electronic warfare systems simultaneously jammed enemy comps, severing their coordination. But a surprise emerged from a new group of 10 boats. 2 emitted encrypted radio signals, not typical pirate frequencies, but military bursts. The Mason CIC went silent for a moment. This confirmed the attackers weren't just reckless Somali pirates, they were organized, trained, and possibly equipped by a larger force. Immediately, the deputy commander ordered active electronic countermeasures, neutralizing the radio bursts. On the sea, the once orderly boat formation descended into chaos, some colliding, others losing control, their speed dropping. Mason capitalized, firing the Mark 38 Mod 3 autocannon, 25mm rounds ripping through the waves, not needing direct hits. Nearby explosions were enough to capsize boats. 3 sank in quick succession. On the Liberty Star's deck, the crew came alive, shouting encouragement, reloading, and providing covering fire while Mason took the lead with devastating firepower. One boat tried circling behind, aiming for the Liberty Star's bow, but Mason's cram locked on, launching a missile that struck the boat's center. The explosion, scattering debris and bodies in a gruesome rain onto the steel deck. The sight stunned many sailors, but fueled their resolve. They were no longer alone. The battle raged another half hour, wave after wave crushed by the combined firepower of the two ships. Yet, the attackers' recklessness revealed a deeper purpose. Evidence came when Mason's task force boarded an intact boat, recovering an encrypted radio. NATO maps marked with warship symbols and handwritten command logs. The intelligence officer's face paled. This isn't piracy. This is a disguised attack rehearsal.
Attack repelled.
70 boats neutralized, dozens dead, some captured, classified materials recovered. But even as the report went out, everyone knew this was just the beginning. The true mastermind remained hidden, and their real intent was far more alarming. On the Liberty Star's deck, sailors stood shoulder to shoulder gazing at Mason, their eyes a mix of gratitude and horror, knowing tonight was no mere pirate attack. It was a message. And that message was written in smoke, fire, and the blood of 70 boats charging to their doom, testing the strength and response of the U.S. Navy. The battle was over for now, but haunting questions lingered, preventing anyone from breathing easy. In the distant darkness, another wave, another hand might already be plotting the next move. Dawn on August 25th cast a heavy glow over the Red Sea, the water speckled with light reflecting off oil slicks, charred wood, and floating boat wreckage. On the USS Mason, the CIC glowed with screens as intelligence officers and analysts dissected recovered data. NATO maps, encrypted radios, intercepted military signals. The conclusion sent a chill through the room. This wasn't freelance piracy, but a deliberate test. Mason's captain growled in his report to the Fifth Fleet. This was a camouflage reconnaissance attack. It cannot be underestimated. The Liberty Star still floated, but its deck was blackened, compartments riddled with bullet holes, cables scorched, and the acrid smell permeating the corridors. Technical teams inspected the hull, noting each dent and puncture, tallying the cost of survival. No one cheered victory. Instead, a heavy silence hung over them. They knew the real enemy hadn't yet shown its face, and what had just happened was merely the prelude to new challenges. As the sun rose higher, its golden light bathed the two ships. Sailors standing in formation on deck, eyes forward, silent but resolute. They had faced 70 boats, dozens of gunmen, fire and blood, and stood firm. But deep down, everyone knew modern warfare had changed. The line between logistics and frontline was gone, and no place was truly safe. That day left a fiery warning. Any ship flying the American flag, even a supply vessel, could become a target, and any attack at sea, even under the guise of piracy, could be a probing dagger from a force lurking in the shadows. The story of the August 2025 attack in the Red Sea is not just a battle against 70 armed boats, but a vivid warning about the nature of modern warfare. The details of the fight prompt reflection. A supply ship like the Liberty Star, meant for logistics, transformed into a fortress, holding off waves of attacks with 50 caliber guns, manual CIWs, and courageous civilian sailors wielding fire extinguishers and axes to repel enemies. This shows the line between logistics and combat has vanished, and every U.S. flagship must be ready for war. The timely arrival of the USS Mason was the turning point, not just with its devastating 5-in cannon and CIWS firepower, but with electronic warfare capabilities that exposed the truth. Behind the pirate facade was an organized force equipped with encrypted radios and NATO maps. This wasn't a raid for ransom, but a test of U.S. Navy reactions. The lesson for Americans is clear. National security is defended not just at borders, but on distant maritime routes where their sons and daughters face danger daily to protect commerce and national power. For leaders, it's a reminder to invest more in maritime security, strengthening protections for supply ships, the lifeblood of naval power. We can take pride that the U.S. military, from civilian sailors to combat officers, held the stars and stripes high in a storm of fire and blood, proving to the world that any enemy challenging America will face only smoke, fire, and defeat. The message to those hiding in the shadows is clear. America does not cower. We have been, are, and will always be ready to respond with the full might of a superpower. Thank you for following this story of fire, smoke, and the courage of the U.S. Navy in the Red Sea battle. Subscribe to the channel to catch more analyses.